Hey there everybody, welcome back to more Haunting Ground. Well, last time we offered up the blood of the Mandragore to gain access to this underground crypt. And what is waiting for us down here but the fires of hell? Also, we see a golem. He does look kind of familiar, but well, I guess it never hurts to do a little exploring before we investigate our golem friend. And something I do want to point out very quickly is that we will never run into Daniela down in this crypt area, so we are relatively safe, and for a good reason, because as we make our way through, we see that most of the ways we can go are actually blocked off by fire, and they have the word meth inscribed in front of them. Now, as you remember from the Hebrew we got in the second update, meth is actually, well, Hebrew for death. I'm not sure if that's meaning to say that if we walk into the fires ourselves that we'll die, but, well, I guess that means we are going to need to figure out what to do with our golem friend here. I wonder if this is our friend Imeth from earlier on. Well, I kind of hope not, because he probably would be pissed by the fact we killed him. But it does appear that he does have a slot in his chest, and we did see the typewriter before, so I assume that means we're going to have to be making key plates. But the question becomes, what are we going to put on the key plate? And wouldn't you know it, there is a helpful inscription here that will tell us exactly what we need to do. So we need to find some means to get our golem friend propelled. And it seems it's a rather simple code. We just have to use the letters L and R to move him left or right, and he will do that at each junction. And it was actually nice enough to give us an example. But we are actually going to be using a bit of a simpler example than the 4 R's it gave us. We're actually just going to be using 3 R's. And what that should do is cause the golem to turn right 3 times. And let's see how well that works. Now, as you can tell, the game just kind of goes into automatic mode here, and you kind of saw that that we do have a quote-unquote run option, but it's still not really that fast, so I decided to speed this up just a little bit, because it ended up taking about 45 fucking seconds for him to walk this really short distance. But, well, where he is going is into the fires of Hades. But his sacrifice is not in vain, as he has now dissipated the fires, and as you can tell, there is a shiny object waiting for us. But the thing is that there's actually another 3 fires to deal with, so I'm sure you don't want to watch 4 to 5 minutes of that, so I am just going to cut ahead. And with all the fires out, there is actually a little bit of an Easter egg here if you make this a special plate key. Let's see what it does. Truly, the terror never stops in the world of Haunting Ground. And, well, there actually is an additional benefit from doing that little Easter egg. As you can tell, Fiona feels a little bit better. And that is actually a full status recovery. It's actually fairly useful, as I think you can come back here as many times as you wish, even though this particular area is a tiny bit out of the way. But with all the fires dissipated, thanks to our sacrificial golem, we can now go ahead and collect a few items and do a little bit more exploring. So the first item we come across is, I think this is the best type of medallion in the game. I think you can only get 3 or 4 of them all total. And our next destination is right up these stairs. As you saw in the inscription, it said it leads into the garden, but what it actually does is lead into that cemetery where we sacrifice the Mandragora. There actually isn't too much in this tiny little area up here. There's a hidden item and an obvious item. But we can never look a gift horse in the mouth, especially when we're still pretty low on items. There's also a rather out-of-the-way oven over here. Seems that maybe somebody is cooking. But after what we've seen Daniela cook so far, I get the feeling that something is kind of off here. Yeah, just a little out-of-the-way scare. Not really sure why this is here. Maybe to go make you go into full-blown panic in case you're really bad at the game. Who knows? But with that little optional area out of the way, we can go further into this crypt area. We can actually start heading where we need to go. Making sure that Huey stays with us. I don't know why, but for some reason in this particular area, his pathfinding just kind of goes to shit. But out of the crypt, we find ourselves in an incredibly out-of-the-way place. We get reminded of that submerged sewer-esque area we were in earlier on in the mansion, and we get to see the lovely anglerfish and barracuda, maybe, that are swimming around in the algae-filled water. But what else could be down here in the submerged areas of the mansion but a library? Maybe we can get in some informative reading while we're down here. Now you might notice amongst all these bookshelves that there does appear to be some type of railing on the floor, little grooves. And also we have a door we can't reach. Yeah, there is a little simple puzzle in this room. It's nothing too mind-bending. But the first thing we have to do is to collect a couple of books that are just kind of lying about. The first one here, Occult Philosophy. If we take a closer look at it, we can see that it was written by Agrippa, or who I assume to be Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, who was a Germanic alchemist. Now the question is, what do we do with this book? Well, if we investigate one of the bookshelves, we find that each bookshelf is dedicated to a particular author. And wouldn't you know, there is actually a book missing. Yeah, like I said before, this is actually a fairly easy to solve puzzle. But it does help us to, I guess, learn about some of the alchemists of yore, such as the writer of Cathedral Secrets. Actually, the game says Frucanelli, but apparently the pseudonym was actually Fulcinelli? Yeah, it was apparently a French writer who no one actually knew the name of, but he may or may not have actually existed. It's kind of hard to say. Obviously, with alchemists, you're not really dealing with hard science. You're dealing with, legend and folklore and things like that. But we just gotta pop his book here at the end. And our final writer is named, I think in the game his name is Frommel, but apparently it was actually Flammel. I guess that just goes back to the Japanese way of sometimes replacing L's with R's. But yeah, Nikolai Flammel was a French alchemist, I think? Or at least he was a shriver in France. I don't think he was actually called an alchemist in his day. But with all that out of the way, after that mind-bending puzzle, we now have made ourselves a walkway to get to that out-of-reach door. And outside of the chicken jerky here, you may notice the randomly strewn mannequin body parts. Not actually sure what that is supposed to be alluding to, but more importantly, we do find a working film projector. And if you recall, we found a film reel before. Let's go ahead and see what's on there.
What is this? I was being filmed. Who's there? Why are you after me? What do you want? Azoth. Azoth? Azoth. Essence of life. Of life. Of woman.
Yeah, without even getting into the unlikelihood of the fact that, how on earth can we have been filmed in all those situations? I mean, I think a camera that would have been able to do that particular type of filming would have had to have been very loud and very obvious, but all that aside, we mysteriously run into Daniela yet again. She actually does give us an interesting piece of the puzzle in her own little disjointed manner, in that, well, she does give us some definition of what Azoth is, and it's the essence of life, or at least the essence of a woman. And that seems to be why she is after Fiona right now. Fiona seems to have this Azoth that maybe Daniela is missing. Maybe Daniela had some horrible operation that left her soulless, or... Well, I think she actually mentioned before that her quote-unquote creator did not make her whole. But all of that aside, we can easily evade her, as you see. The crypt is probably the easiest way to evade her in this particular area. I'm actually kind of surprised that after the golem puzzle, they didn't just make it so she could come down here. But as we find ourselves shoved into an MC Escher painting, we do have to wonder a little bit more about just why on earth we're still here. I mean, clearly some people have their own motivations for trying to get to Fiona, but I don't know, we still haven't seen that particular gentleman with the wide-brimmed hat that we saw in the flashback. So that still means there are plenty of things left to be answered.
Good boy.
But I think for right now, we just still need to keep on trucking. We did see something rather interesting amongst all those images of Fiona in that film reel we saw before, and it seemed to be some type of combination for a door. Before we head to that, though, there is something important in this little medical bay here. With all of its seemingly advanced technology, it seems really out of place in this mansion and castle area. But I guess we shouldn't worry about it too much. That's not really the reason I came in here. It's actually for this sink in the corner, because it's a rather easily missed status recovery point. Just in case you did happen to decide to fight Daniela there. Or in case she does happen to chase you into this particular room, if you examine one of these bottles here, you'll find that you can get a very interesting thing to happen. But there are actually two bottles in here, and if you happen to pick the other one, yeah, in that case you just happen to piss Daniela off and she will come after you with all the fury a woman has. But with our status fully recovered, we can kind of just keep on ambling along. Now we do find a rather impressive looking machine here, but we're not going to actually be using this just yet. This is actually just something to keep in mind for a bit later. For a seemingly cumbersome puzzle, but it'll be easier whenever I'm doing it, trust me. At the end of this stone passageway here, we find that dial that was shown to us in the film reel. Now, in all reality, you really did not need to find the film, and you did not have to go look at it. It does help, but really, I'm thinking you may have all of 30 or 40 different possibilities here, and really even guessing, you have a pretty good chance of figuring it out. With the door unlocked, we actually find ourselves back almost near the beginning of where we started the mansion.
Huey.
Now, the one main difference here is that we are, I think, a bit lower down. We don't want to go all the way down to the bottom just yet because there's just a locked door down there.
Come on.
Huey just being a little fussy dog. We need you, Huey. You're important to us. In fact, in this particular room, Huey is exceedingly important to us, because as you can tell from his barking, the floor is trapped. So all we need to do here is to simply command Huey to go forth, and he'll use his magic doggy sense to figure out the correct path to go. But you do have to follow him very closely and very directly, otherwise you will get your first warning. Yeah, unlike other instant death traps, this one actually does give you a chance before it decides to kill you. And in case you were wondering what it was like when it kills you, fairly gruesome, but I kind of feel that it can be easily evaded just by ducking, but an even more easier method of evasion is to merely turn the trap off. So now, in case we ever wanted to backtrack, we can now easily do that. And we find ourselves on the second floor of that particular library we found adjacent to the crypt and the watery underground area. Still not exactly sure what we are looking for in this particular mansion area, but you know, I get the feeling that we are coming invariably close to where we need to be.
Come on.
Blood, flesh, woman, you vile creature. You lure the man into your filthy body again and again, and you are allowed to do that because you are a precious, precious little princess. Precious little princess.
Wow. Whatever cracked in Daniela, it really cracked. But yep, welcome to the boss fight with Daniela, finally. We get to see her full range of attacks that we've been managing to avoid by not really running into her all that much. Now she has that screaming attack that you have been seeing. It does a little bit of panic and it does kind of freeze us in place. She also does have a 3-hit combo with that shard of glass she has. Or if you made the mistake earlier of talking to her near the fireplace, she would be attacking you with a poker. But in all reality, compared to Debilitas, Daniela is actually a lot easier to deal with. She doesn't really do near as much damage, and she's a lot easier to get the power attack on with Huey, but well, the main danger still is just going into a full-on panic. But I mean, we've already knocked her down, so I guess we won. But well, the fight still seems to be going on, so I guess there is something more we do need to do here. So I am just going to calm down Fiona just a little bit and, well, explain the fact that, well, you probably have noticed these statues around the outside of that circle there. And for whatever odd reason, we just have to push them along their tracks to the end. And it will cause that center circle there to light up just a little bit. And all we have to do is do that for all 4 of these little statues. Not really that difficult. The only difficulty comes in the fact that, well, you can't really direct Huey while you're pushing, so I don't know, usually the best thing to do is to just have Huey attack her back, and if you really want to, you can just attack her to the point where she gets knocked down again. Really not that difficult, and really it just becomes easier and easier the more damage you do to her. You do want to keep in mind that it's usually not a good idea to attack her on the tracks themselves, as both she and Huey can actually block the progression of the statues. But I guess while we wait for this boss battle to wind down, I guess it is good to look back on Daniela here, and I don't know, to some degree, I do feel a bit of sympathy for her. She does remind me a bit of Debilitas, and that, well, she really wasn't a complete person.
Come on.
And I guess to some small degree, I do understand her want to be a full, whole person, but then again, I do realize that she wanted to slice and dice our character up, and, well, she appears to be pretty fucking crazy, so yeah, I'm a bit torn. But we don't really have a place here in the game to judge morality. Really, all we have left to do is to continue pushing our statues. We don't have too much further to go here.
Go!
And in case you are wondering, no, we do not have multiple choices like we did with the Debilitas fight. There is really only one way this fight can go. It's at this point that Huey really starts to get into a state of danger. Daniela has completely decided to ignore us and is fully focused on Huey. I hope Huey can survive. Hey, stop hitting our dog. And just like that, Daniela is done. And I think Huey has been such a good boy during that fight. He definitely deserves some beef jerky. Good boy.
Good boy.
But with Daniela completely defeated, we see a shiny new object on the ground next to her. And it is actually a key to a door we have not seen just yet. But it is time to bid yet adieu to another stalker. Kinda makes me wonder what else is laying ahead for our dear Fiona here. She has quite clearly stated things have gotten pretty well out of hand. We still have no idea why or what's really going on. I don't know, all we can really hope for is that maybe next time we get a little bit more answers. Hopefully you will join me then as we continue on further into more haunting ground.